Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Young and the Restless channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and hit like for more daily drama updates and spoilers. Your support truly means a lot and helps our channel grow every day. Now, let's jump straight into today's exciting update. It all begins with a shocking twist that has left fans of the Young and the Restless stunned, frustrated, and asking how a storyline could spiral so wildly out of control. Diane Jenkins Abbott is suddenly arrested for the brutal stabbing of her own husband, Jack Abbott, yet viewers never actually witness the most important moments of the investigation. Instead, everything happens somewhere off-screen, hidden from the audience, as though the show expects everyone to simply accept the impossible. Diane disappears into police custody without viewers seeing the booking process, without a mugshot, without investigators collecting meaningful evidence, and without even the slightest attempt to justify such an extraordinary accusation. The only thing driving the entire case is Patty Williams's accusation that Diane committed the crime. Detective Burrow accepts Patty's story almost instantly, despite having absolutely no physical evidence to support it, and somehow an unbelievable plan to frame Diane for attacking both Patty and Jack appears to be succeeding. As the drama unfolds, the sense of disbelief only grows stronger, leaving many longtime viewers wondering how a story built on such impossible logic could ever make it onto the screen. The outrage across the soap community has exploded, almost as dramatically as the events unfolding inside Genoa City itself. Social media has become flooded with angry reactions from devoted fans who cannot understand how Patty, arguably one of the least trustworthy people in town, is suddenly being treated as a reliable witness. The storyline asks viewers to believe that Patty has successfully framed Diane for attempting to murder both herself and Jack, despite everything the audience already knows. In reality, viewers watched Patty stab Jack in the stomach before deliberately slashing her own arms to make Diane appear guilty. The truth has been shown plainly to everyone watching, yet inside the fictional world of the show, nearly every legal authority seems blind to what feels painfully obvious. Ironically, almost every character in Genoa City, except Detective Burrow and the district attorney, immediately realizes Patty is responsible. That contradiction only deepens the frustration, making every new development feel less like suspense and more like a test of the audience's patience. Patty's history makes the entire investigation even harder to believe, because her record is impossible to ignore. For years, she has been recognized as someone suffering from severe mental illness, someone whose violent past has shaped countless tragedies throughout Genoa City's history. Until only recently, Patty had been confined to a psychiatric institution under the care of Dr. Markham, receiving treatment for the very instability that has repeatedly endangered everyone around her. Her long history of violence, institutionalization, and criminal behavior would realistically make any testimony she offered immediately suspect. Instead, Detective Burrow appears to accept every word she says without hesitation, as though none of that history exists. It feels astonishing that a police detective would overlook something so fundamental, especially when Patty's criminal record would be readily available with even the most basic background check. The investigation begins to resemble less of a professional police case and more of an unbelievable misunderstanding that refuses to correct itself. When Diane's own history is compared with Patty's, the imbalance becomes even more glaring. Diane certainly has a controversial past, but her most notable crime involved faking her own death as part of a fraud scheme years ago. That deception damaged relationships and trust, but it bears little resemblance to Patty's long record of attempted murders and violent attacks. If anyone were honestly weighing which woman posed the greater threat, the answer would seem painfully obvious. Patty has repeatedly demonstrated both violent tendencies and dangerous instability, while Diane has never been known for committing acts of physical brutality. Yet somehow, the legal system inside Genoa City behaves as though these two women carry equal credibility. Rather than carefully evaluating their vastly different histories, the investigation ignores common sense entirely, leaving viewers struggling to understand how anyone could reasonably arrive at the conclusion that Diane is the obvious suspect. Patty's violent past stretches far beyond a single incident, making the decision to trust her even more unbelievable. She previously shot Jack Abbott and nearly killed him long before the current attack ever occurred. She also shot Victor Newman, leaving him so gravely wounded that he ultimately required a heart transplant to survive. Even more tragically, Patty's actions ultimately contributed to the death of Tracy Abbott's beloved daughter, Colleen, forever changing the Abbott family. These aren't distant rumors or forgotten crimes buried deep in history. They are defining moments that shaped many of Genoa City's most heartbreaking chapters. Yet despite all of that, Patty is somehow treated as a credible witness whose accusations carry immediate weight. Even Dr. Markham, whose own actions toward Diane raise serious ethical concerns, is allowed to participate as a witness, adding another layer of confusion to an already unbelievable investigation. The Abbott family themselves know exactly who Patty is because they have recently lived through her terrifying obsession firsthand. Only weeks earlier, Patty kidnapped Jack, emotionally manipulated him, and held him captive in a disturbing attempt to isolate him from everyone he loved. Tracy Abbott and Kyle Abbott both witnessed Patty blackmailing Jack into forcing his own family out of the Abbott mansion simply so Patty could live there alone with him. That bizarre and obsessive behavior wasn't buried in the distant past. It happened only recently. Every member of the Abbott family understands how dangerous Patty has become because they experienced her escalating instability personally. They know she is capable of manipulation, deception, and violence. Watching authorities ignore all of that firsthand knowledge only makes the storyline feel increasingly detached from its own history. Meanwhile, Diane's own account is remarkably consistent and supported by witnesses. Both Diane and Kyle tell the exact same story about Dr. Markham holding Diane captive inside his home against her will. Kyle even broke into the house to rescue his mother after realizing something was terribly wrong. Diane openly admitted that she drugged Dr. Markham, not out of malice, but as a desperate act to escape unlawful captivity. Kyle witnessed the entire ordeal unfold, giving powerful credibility to every detail she described. Rather than contradicting one another, mother and son provide matching accounts, supported by observable events. Yet, instead of strengthening Diane's innocence, their testimony seems almost completely ignored. Perhaps even more remarkable is the unwavering support Diane receives from every member of the Abbott family. Not a single Abbott questions whether Diane attacked Jack. There are no suspicious glances, no divided loyalties, and no family members quietly wondering whether she might actually be guilty. Every one of them immediately points to Patty as the true attacker because they know her history, they know her obsession, and they know what she is capable of doing. That collective certainty should carry tremendous weight during any investigation, especially when coming from the victim's own family. Instead, Detective Burrow dismisses all of their confidence and chooses to build the case almost entirely around Patty's accusation. The disconnect between what every major character believes and what law enforcement concludes creates one of the most jarring inconsistencies in the entire storyline. The execution of the entire investigation only adds to the growing frustration. Viewers never witness Diane being formally processed after her arrest. There is no dramatic booking sequence, no evidence collection, no forensic investigation, and virtually no attempt to establish how authorities reached such an extraordinary conclusion. Instead, enormous developments occur somewhere beyond the camera's view, while audiences are expected to fill in the blanks themselves. Even by soap opera standards, where dramatic coincidences often thrive, this feels unusually rushed and incomplete. It isn't merely unbelievable. It feels unfinished. Rather than creating suspense, the missing scenes leave many viewers feeling disconnected from the very story they're supposed to be emotionally invested in. Kyle's role introduces yet another enormous problem with the investigation, because he serves as Diane's strongest alibi. The two of them arrived back at the Abbott mansion together after escaping Dr. Markham's house, and Kyle has no criminal history that would undermine his credibility. Unlike Patty, Kyle has never been institutionalized or known for violent behavior. Dr. Markham himself even confirms that Diane drugged him before escaping, validating a major part of Diane's story. If Diane escaped Markham's house with Kyle, investigators should naturally ask how she supposedly traveled elsewhere to attack Jack before arriving home. Diane had no vehicle because her car wasn't in her possession. She had no phone available to call for transportation. Every practical detail reinforces Kyle's version of events, making the accusation against Diane appear increasingly impossible. Adding even more confusion, longtime viewers remember that the Abbott mansion has long been equipped with security cameras. Previous storylines have established those cameras numerous times, making them a familiar part of the Abbott estate. If those cameras still exist, they should clearly show Kyle and Diane arriving home together in the same vehicle, stepping out, and entering the mansion side by side. Such footage would instantly reinforce Diane's alibi and significantly weaken Patty's accusations. Yet the cameras are never mentioned during the investigation, almost as though their existence has been conveniently forgotten. For many fans, this omission feels less like an intentional mystery and more like a glaring oversight. The absence of such obvious evidence only intensifies criticism that the storyline is ignoring its own established continuity. The problems surrounding Diane's disappearance extend beyond the current investigation, because viewers had already noticed major inconsistencies before this arrest storyline even began. Earlier episodes established that Diane had gone missing for quite some time. Kyle worried openly about her disappearance, telling Jack that Diane had vanished from work and hadn't even been sleeping in her room at the Genoa City Athletic Club. Then, during the crossover event with Beyond the Gates, Diane suddenly appeared smiling beside Jack and Kyle at a political fundraiser. Their marriage seemed perfectly happy. Their relationship appeared completely intact, and there was no indication she had ever gone missing. Yet, immediately after the crossover ended, The Young and the Restless returned to portraying Diane as mysteriously missing once again. That abrupt contradiction shattered the continuity of the story, leaving viewers feeling as though entire chapters of the narrative had been rewritten overnight. As the legal consequences continue to escalate, the situation becomes even harder to believe. District Attorney Christine Williams appears fully prepared to charge Diane with 2 counts of attempted murder for both Jack and Patty. That decision is particularly baffling because Christine knows Patty better than almost anyone. Patty was once Christine's own sister-in-law, meaning Christine has first-hand knowledge of Patty's terrifying criminal history, repeated psychiatric treatment, violent outbursts, arrests, convictions, and long record of instability. No one should understand Patty's lack of credibility more clearly than Christine herself. Yet somehow Christine behaves as though Patty's testimony deserves complete confidence, while Diane becomes the obvious villain. The portrayal transforms an experienced district attorney into someone making decisions that feel impossible to reconcile with everything the audience already knows. That growing frustration has fueled fierce criticism directed at the writing itself. Many viewers feel the story is unfolding as though nobody in Genoa City remembers Patty's past, even though her crimes have shaped countless lives over many years. Soap fans certainly haven't forgotten those events, making it increasingly difficult to suspend disbelief when characters appear to ignore them. Patty kidnapped Jack only recently. Diane herself had mysteriously disappeared, and nearly everyone connected to the Abbott family understands exactly how dangerous Patty remains. Yet the script repeatedly asks viewers to accept conclusions that directly contradict years of established history. Instead of building drama through believable conflict, the story seems to erase its own continuity whenever it becomes inconvenient. That disconnect has become one of the central reasons so many longtime fans have expressed disappointment. Another overlooked detail has become a major talking point among viewers. Diane had a cell phone with her throughout much of the ordeal. Even a locked cell phone can dial emergency services, and in many situations, a phone without active cellular service can still connect to 911. That simple reality raises obvious questions about why Diane never called for immediate help while trapped or endangered. The issue may appear small at first glance, but in a storyline built around questions of timing, escape, and innocence, it becomes surprisingly significant. Many fans argue that such practical details should have been considered before the story reached the screen. Instead, the omission adds yet another layer of frustration to a narrative already struggling under the weight of its own inconsistencies. The off-screen storytelling continues to undermine the tension, as Diane is somehow arrested, processed, and released on bail almost entirely outside the audience's view. In a real attempted murder case, obtaining bail would require judicial hearings, legal arguments, evidence review, and time for prosecutors to present their case before a judge. Serious violent felony charges simply do not move from arrest to release within moments. Yet inside the show, these enormous legal developments happen almost instantaneously, leaving viewers feeling as though entire episodes of storytelling have vanished. Important dramatic moments that could have deepened the emotional stakes instead occur somewhere beyond the camera. Meanwhile, much of the on-screen attention shifts elsewhere, creating an awkward contrast between life-changing legal developments and comparatively minor scenes unfolding around Genoa City. Even with Diane now officially accused of attacking Jack, another dangerous threat continues to grow in the shadows. Patty tells Dr. Markham that Jack must die before he regains consciousness, because if he wakes up, he can reveal the truth about who really stabbed him. That chilling declaration immediately raises obvious questions about Jack's safety. Under normal circumstances, a victim in critical condition would almost certainly have police protection stationed outside the hospital room. Likewise, Diane, now charged with attempting to murder her husband, would realistically be kept far away from his bedside until the investigation progressed. Yet, somehow, she is allowed to sit beside Jack despite the accusations against her, while Patty continues plotting in the background. The situation becomes so implausible that many viewers believe even a child could identify the enormous holes in the story's logic. As the controversy has spread across social media, thousands of passionate viewers have voiced remarkably similar frustrations. One fan argued that the writers must believe the audience is foolish to expect them to accept such impossible storytelling. Another insisted the creative team has shown no respect for longtime viewers who remember the show's own history. Others pointed directly to Patty's outrageous accusation against Diane, questioning how such an unbelievable twist ever survived the writing process. Many admitted that soap opera fans are usually willing to forgive exaggerated twists, unlikely coincidences, and dramatic surprises, but insisted that Patty successfully framing Diane for stabbing Jack crossed a line they simply could not overlook. Additional viewers described Diane's arrest as the very definition of lazy writing, pointing out that she ended up with Jack's blood on her hands only because she was desperately trying to save his life. Perhaps the most widely echoed criticism captured the entire controversy in one unforgettable thought: allowing Patty to accuse Diane on the spot while Jack lay bleeding, and having police immediately haul Diane away without meaningful investigation represented, for many fans, the very peak of bad soap writing. And judging by the overwhelming reaction across the fan community, countless viewers wholeheartedly agreed. It is impossible to ignore how every new development seems to pile another layer of disbelief onto an already collapsing investigation. Instead of slowing down to let the evidence naturally guide the story, The narrative races from one shocking accusation to another, while leaving the most important questions completely unanswered. The audience watches as characters who have known Patty Williams for decades suddenly behave as though she is a trustworthy eyewitness, rather than one of Genoa City's most dangerous and unstable residents. Every time the legal system accepts another one of Patty's claims without hesitation, the tension no longer comes from wondering who committed the crime, because viewers already know the answer. Instead, the suspense shifts toward wondering how much longer common sense can be ignored before the truth finally catches up with everyone involved. That reversal weakens what could have been an emotionally gripping mystery, replacing genuine uncertainty with growing frustration as fans wait for the obvious reality to be acknowledged. At the heart of the entire controversy is Jack Abbott himself, lying unconscious and unable to speak for the one person who could completely dismantle Patty's carefully constructed lie. His silence becomes Patty's greatest weapon, because every minute he remains unable to tell investigators what truly happened allows her deception to spread deeper throughout Genoa City. While doctors fight to save his life, Patty quietly continues manipulating the situation from the shadows, fully aware that time is now working in her favor. Her chilling determination to make sure Jack never wakes up reveals just how dangerous she truly remains. It is no longer simply about framing Diane. It has become a desperate attempt to erase the only witness capable of exposing the truth. That sinister motivation should send shockwaves through everyone involved in the investigation. Yet somehow, the authorities remain focused almost entirely on prosecuting the wrong person. Meanwhile, Diane finds herself trapped in a nightmare she cannot seem to escape. Only days earlier, she had been fighting for her own freedom after being held captive by Dr. Markham, believing that once she escaped, the worst part of her ordeal would finally be over. Instead, her rescue leads directly into another devastating chapter as she transforms from victim into suspect almost overnight. Every attempt she makes to explain what happened seems to fall on deaf ears, despite the fact that her story remains completely consistent from beginning to end. The woman who rushed to help Jack after finding him wounded now carries the cruel burden of being accused of causing those very injuries. Rather than receiving compassion for everything she has endured, she is forced to defend herself against allegations that ignore both the evidence and the reality everyone around her should already understand. Kyle Abbott's position becomes equally heartbreaking because he knows, beyond any doubt, that his mother is innocent. He personally rescued Diane from captivity, witnessed her desperate escape, and accompanied her back to the Abbott mansion. Every detail of his account supports hers, yet his testimony appears to hold remarkably little influence with investigators. Kyle is not trying to invent an elaborate cover story or protect a guilty parent out of blind loyalty. He is simply telling the truth as he experienced it, hoping that logic and facts will eventually prevail. Watching his efforts repeatedly dismissed only reinforces the growing sense that this investigation has abandoned reason altogether in favor of forcing the story toward a predetermined conclusion. The Abbott family, already battered by years of heartbreak and betrayal, now faces another devastating emotional storm. Instead of standing together to celebrate Diane's safe return after her disappearance, they are suddenly forced into another exhausting battle to prove her innocence. Jack's critical condition leaves the family emotionally shattered, while Diane's arrest threatens to tear apart what little stability remains. Every hospital visit carries enormous emotional weight, because the family isn't just worrying about Jack's survival. They're also watching Diane's future unravel before their eyes. Their grief is compounded by helplessness, knowing exactly who is responsible, while realizing the people with the power to stop Patty refuse to see what seems painfully obvious. The emotional strain reaches every corner of the Abbott family, creating an atmosphere filled with fear, anger, and desperate hope that the truth will eventually emerge.
Perhaps the greatest tragedy of the entire storyline is that so much of the emotional payoff happens outside the audience's view. Soap operas thrive on courtroom confrontations, explosive interrogations, dramatic arrests, and emotionally charged family scenes where every character is forced to confront impossible choices. Instead, many of the biggest developments simply happen off-screen, before viewers are abruptly informed that they already occurred. Diane's arrest, her processing, her release on bail, and several key legal developments arrive as completed events rather than moments audiences can experience alongside the characters. As a result, scenes that should have carried enormous dramatic impact instead feel strangely disconnected. Rather than building suspense through carefully paced storytelling, the narrative often skips directly to the aftermath, leaving viewers to imagine the most important scenes for themselves. As the story moves forward, one unavoidable question continues hanging over every episode. How long can Patty's deception realistically survive? Every passing day increases the possibility that new evidence will surface, Jack will regain consciousness, or someone will finally connect the obvious pieces that have been sitting in plain sight all along. The security footage, Kyle's testimony, Dr. Markham's admissions, Patty's violent history, and the Abbott family's unwavering certainty all point toward the same conclusion. None of those facts have disappeared. They remain waiting in the background, almost like ticking time bombs that could destroy Patty's carefully crafted lie the moment someone chooses to examine them honestly. Until that happens, however, Diane remains caught inside an investigation that many viewers believe never should have existed in the first place. For longtime fans of The Young and the Restless, the controversy extends beyond a single plot twist because it touches something much deeper, the show's own history. Loyal viewers have invested years, and in many cases decades, following these characters through countless triumphs and tragedies. They remember Patty's crimes because they watched them unfold. They remember Diane's complicated redemption journey, Jack's painful history with Patty, Victor's shooting, Colleen's heartbreaking death, and every major event that shaped Genoa City into what it is today. That shared history creates an unspoken promise between the writers and the audience. No matter how dramatic the twists become, the past still matters. When a storyline appears to ignore that history, many fans don't simply disagree with the plot. They feel as though their years of emotional investment are being dismissed. Whether the truth finally comes to light through Jack's recovery, Patty's inevitable mistake, or the discovery of evidence that should have been examined from the very beginning, one thing has become impossible to ignore. This storyline has sparked one of the strongest waves of fan criticism in recent memory. Not because viewers reject dramatic storytelling, but because they believe drama works best when it grows from believable character choices and established history. Soap audiences have always embraced outrageous twists, shocking betrayals, unexpected resurrections, and impossible romances. But they also expect those stories to respect the world the characters already inhabit. As Diane fights to clear her name, Patty desperately tries to keep her secret buried, and Jack's life hangs in the balance. Fans continue waiting for the moment when truth finally overcomes deception. Until then, the debate surrounding this controversial storyline shows no signs of fading, ensuring that every new episode will be watched with equal parts anticipation, frustration, and hope that justice will eventually find its way back to Genoa City.